Hello, welcome. This is the autumn 2025 PhD admissions information session. Welcome to everyone who is here. Just so you know, if you registered for this event, we will send out slides afterwards, and this is being recorded and we'll post to the website as quickly as we can. So if you have questions, you can always refer back to the recording, the slide deck, or email our advising office for more questions. So thank you all for being here. My name is Kathleen Rascon. I am the Academic Services Director and PhD Advisor, working with current students in the program, prospective students looking to apply to join our program. And if you are offered admission to this program, you'll see me with visit days and orientation. And so supporting this program in a lot of ways outside of teaching classes. And I'll pass it off to our program director, Sean Munson.
Hey, I'm Sean Munson. I'm a professor in human-centered design and engineering, and I'm currently the faculty program director. So I work a lot with Kathleen on how we support students in the PhD program, how we manage our admission process, and things like that. And I will be the program director just through this admission cycle when Professor Kate Starbird will take over. So if you apply and you're corresponding with us at some point, the faculty side of the communication will switch from me to Kate.
Okay. You want me to take this one?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. So PhD at a glance, trying to hit some of the high topics that are often questions we receive about this program. And this is a picture of our beautiful campus in the fall, which is starting to turn all of its colors. You can see Mount Rainier in the background, and that's looking over Drumheller Fountain. So we are a department in the College of Engineering. We're actually one of 10 departments in the College of Engineering, and we have a bachelor's program, master's, a graduate certificate, and a PhD doctoral program in human-centered design and engineering. We're a full-time day program, so classes take place kind of between 9:30 and maybe as late as 3:30 or 4 in the day. Students usually take full classes in their second to third year. Before then, they just mostly focus on their writing credits for their dissertation. We are in person at the UW Seattle campus, and most students graduate in a 5-year timeline, maybe 5.5. For those that already have master's degrees or planning to finish master's degrees and are wanting to transfer credits over, up to 30 credits can come over. You would think that that would impact your timeline. Sometimes it does, but with the milestones and working towards a published dissertation, even with a master's degree, a 5-year timeline is still pretty consistent. We do offer full funding. So you have tuition and fees covered, and health benefits are covered with your TA and RA contracts, where you work at a 50% or 20 hours a week or so, working in the department, supporting the teaching needs of our master's and bachelor's classes, or working on research along with faculty on funded grants. And overall, I mean, we're going to deep dive into what human-centered design and engineering doctoral program looks like and what it means, because it's really broad and how you could apply this to different communities, industries. It's grounded in the understanding of conception, design, implementation, evaluation, and effects of technologies, focusing on how people engage with these systems and what those needs are. So we're excited to jump into a little bit more about what HCDE means for different research. So I'll pass it off to Sean to talk a little bit more about the program.
Yeah, so how do folks actually go through the program? Our PhD program, and actually a lot of the PhD programs you're probably looking at, are organized along this path of often the first couple of years are, you're doing a bit more coursework. And the goal here is to build out your toolbox of theories and of methods that support your research, and then move on to doing more research that's more independent over time. And so in the first year, you'll be taking a lot of foundational courses with your cohort. But we also protect some time for research through at least 2 rotations, which are times where you work with faculty and get to know their labs and do some of your own research. And you may be bringing research into your classes as well. By the time that you are entering your second year, you'll be completing prelims where you present research where you've led some or all of it, and it's a paper and a presentation that you share it with faculty, and that's your prelim exam. And this is, again, it holds us all accountable to make sure that even amid the courses in your first year, you're making time for your own research and scholarship. As you move toward the third year, you're often taking significantly fewer courses, and then by years 4 and 5, you'll be working more on your dissertation and heading towards graduation. And our median time toward graduation is about 5.5 years. It can vary significantly depending how much prior research experience you come in with, as well as the kind of methods you're using, as well as your long-term career goals. And so that kind of brings us to this next point, which is that everyone's path through the PhD program ends up being very tailored to their past experiences, their goals, the opportunities they have. And so milestones like generals, dissertation proposal, dissertation defense are super individualized. The PhD program takes very different amounts of time for different students depending on their experiences and goals, as well as whether they're going away in summer to do internships or not. And so everything ends up being very much about you within this broader framework that's meant to support our PhD students. And so the first year is the one that folks, is the most standardized, the one that looks most consistent. Students take our foundations courses, which are Introduction to PhD Studies and Empirical Traditions. As Kathleen mentioned, we're a super interdisciplinary program, and folks come in with a lot of different backgrounds and opportunities. And so just getting to know the ways that different fields contribute to the research and the different kinds of questions that they ask and the different methods they use is really valuable for being able to work with your cohort and be able to take advantage of all the other opportunities in HCD and UW. Students also take a theory class, usually in the first year, and then some theory electives, which may be in the first year, second year, sometimes in the third year. Methods electives, again, because of the different kinds of research that people do, we want every student to have a foundation in experimental and quasi-experimental methods and qualitative methods. And then there's also methods electives within the department and around campus that folks take. And then to support your own research interests, students also build a concentration from courses in HCDE and around UW that's meant to be more aligned with your research focus as well.
Ooh,
Oops.
what is happening? Let's try that again.
Okay. Well, in addition to these courses, HCD PhD students can earn a master's degree along the way to the PhD. There are broadly two ways to do it. One that you complete just by meeting the requirements of your PhD. Once you've completed most of your core courses, you've developed your concentration, you've completed prelims, you can earn an HCD research-oriented master's. For some students who have more industry-oriented goals, there's also our practice-oriented master's, and that often involves taking more courses on human-centered design techniques and methods as well.
Do you have any questions at this point? Maybe not.
All right, and so one of the other features of our programs that may not be super common elsewhere is we have directed research groups, which are these 4-credit research groups where you're working with other students in HCD programs, so undergrad students or master's students in our PhD program and elsewhere, on research or some experiential work with faculty. And this can be a really great way to join one and participate in a side project or learn about a topic. Often students are contributing to conducting studies, but they may also be more kind of exploratory of let's spend a quarter reading about this topic or designing this system or something like that. And then as you become more senior in the program, it's also common for PhD students to co-lead one with faculty that is meant to support your research, which is really great because, I tend to think that more ideas and more perspectives makes our research stronger, and working closely with our master's and undergraduate students exposes them to research, but it also increases the quality of our research and helps us get more done.
Do we want to pause? Does anyone have any questions about courses before we jump into milestones? Yeah, Megan.
Hey, so my question for you guys is regarding the fact that this is interdisciplinary, I understand that, but I do have a concern with regards to the background of most of the professors. I'm not going to say all, but most of the professors tend to come either from engineering or computer science. Now, just to give you a bit of a background on myself, I come from communication and my master's is in digital media, which is not, it's a far stretch when it comes to engineering. I've worked with programmers. Um, I also have like 20 years of work experience in project management, and I hesitate to apply to a program like that just because of the fact that it's very science-based, if that makes sense. I guess my question is, what are your comments regarding something like that?
I think I would say look at our courses, right? And are the courses something that aligns with your background and your expertise? And again, those can be tailored, right? So some students who come in with more background in one area or another might, for example, not take one of our foundations methods courses, but take a different methods class. And additionally, also really look closely at what advisors are saying about the kinds of students they're seeking to recruit, as well as kind of what background they say is necessary to succeed in their research programs. So, and that can vary year to year, right? So sometimes I have projects that really do need someone with a very strong technical quantitative background. Other times it's more open-ended. And so there can be a lot of variation from advisor to advisor and research group to research group.
Yeah, I'd also just add that we specifically don't require that you have a specific bachelor's degree to join the program. And in that evaluation, faculty are trying to understand, these are how you list your research goals, the research questions you're asking, the type of research you want to engage with. Are you prepared to do that? Do you have the prep to do that type of work? And some students do very quantitative, others on the other side of the spectrum, qualitative. And so we're kind of in a way asking applicants to demonstrate like, yes, I'm ready for this next step of a PhD and I have what I need to step into these courses where I'm building theory, research methods. And so if you have questions about that, definitely make an appointment, happy to meet and talk, but we keep it open because we're not only looking for folks with a STEM background wanting to do a certain type of research. Yeah, Alan?
Okay, so good morning, everyone. My background is in, STEM. I've done like a bachelor's in computer science and mathematics. I have a master's of information systems, but those two degrees are from Africa, from my home country in Uganda. So, of course, everybody who comes here doesn't, those qualifications, especially, don't really get them, job placements for the better part. But so I'm currently like a master student of cybersecurity and leadership from the University of Washington in Tacoma. And so I have a lot of experience, like it's not experience, but so I've done a lot of courses in mathematics and IT and cybersecurity. So I was wondering what could, how many or if any would be transferable to this PhD program, and that's reducing on the courses that I have to do theoretically by start embarking on my my research. Did you get the question? I'm just
Yeah, I did. I think Kathleen might better answer the transfer mechanisms than I do. So I was going to see what Kathleen.
Just about how you transfer the classes.
The credits, if and when I enroll to this PhD program, will I have the opportunity to have some credits, transferred, from my previous degrees.
Yeah, so
that I'm doing.
Yeah, so I mean, there's two things happening. One is the logistics of having the completed transcripts, right, that you include in your application, sending official transcripts if you're admitted, and us petitioning to the graduate school to waive 30 credits out of the total 90 that you need as your for your PhD degree. Then separately, we have two ways we track courses. One is through the online system that we communicate to the graduate school of like, here's, how many credits remaining. These are the requirements we fulfilled. Some might be waived, some might be taken with classes at UW. But how we communicate that information is what we call a course of study form. And that's an open conversation with you and your advisor. So you might have this specific class from your master's that talks about theory or research methods, and you're very clear how this fulfills your concentration or a methods elective. And then you have kind of an open conversation about the syllabus, the content, the learning outcomes. And it might fit in the bigger picture of like, so at UW, I want to take these other courses because I want to specialize in this type of method or something. And then they may approve that, and then that's communicated to the department and we approve it and make it so as we communicate your degree. So that's happening all the time. It's really fluid because it depends on your background, what you need to learn, what's supporting your learning for your dissertation. And so many students are coming in with masters and we're waiving the credits, and then we're figuring out how specific courses can fit in. So definitely something that will happen after a student matriculates. Yeah, we don't have to worry about it at this point at the application stage.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Right.
Should we talk about rotations?
Any other class? Okay, great. We can move on to milestones.
Oh, yeah, milestones. All right, so milestones are also a big part of a PhD process. The courses are often about building the toolbox. I see the milestones as really being about your progression through the program. And so in either spring of your first year or autumn of the second year, you'll complete a preliminary exam where you share a paper and a presentation with the whole HCD community. It's a fun event. It's in the big public audience. People show up and ask questions, and you get some community feedback on your research. And what we're really looking for at this stage is demonstrating that you can do the end-to-end research process, from forming a question, talking about how it fits in with related work and what else is going on in a field, to picking the right methods to answer those research questions and developing findings or insights based on it, and then sharing out what do those findings or insights mean for society, for your academic communities. And so this is a really important way that we kind of check in on research progression in kind of the end of the first year or the start of the second year. After that, or around that time, you'll declare an advisor. Some of you may be admitted with advisors, but as we'll get into, we also like to leave room for folks to figure out the right advising plan for them. And then you'll name a committee, and that's a set of faculty who are there to support you in developing your scholarship. And so with a committee, you'll start planning your general exam. And the way that students do that is they prepare a short document that describes their research interests, what else is going on, the kind of methods they're thinking about using, the kind of theoretical lenses they're thinking about using, and the area in which they think they're going to work. And then they pair that with a reading list in those topics. And they read. That can be over a period of a month or two. Sometimes it's over a period of a couple quarters. Again, the right thing varies from student to student. And then based on your readings and that document that describes your interests, your committee prepares a charge or a set of questions for you about that you'll answer over a period of 2 weeks. And the goal here is not to have you writing exhaustively for 2 weeks, but to give you time to write a little bit every day, reflect on it, come back to it, and develop some really strong responses. And then you'll have about a 2-hour meeting with your committee where you discuss those responses, and the committee kind of draws out more details, and that's your general exam. After your general exam, you should have this really strong foundation in methods and theory in your research area to develop your dissertation proposal. And that's where you work with the committee to determine the remaining steps for your dissertation, get feedback, and discuss how it fits with your career plans. Often by the time students do a dissertation proposal, they've done 2 or 3 studies out of 3 or 4 studies that make up their dissertation, right? So this is often about what are the finishing touches on the dissertation, and how is it going to come together? Often it's the plan for the last year or so of someone's dissertation work. And then they do that, and they do their dissertation research, they prepare their dissertation, they present it to the community, and they get feedback. And almost everyone has some revisions that they have to make to their document based on the feedback they get from their committee They're presenting it publicly, they're getting a lot of great questions. Even if the revisions aren't required, usually students want to make some changes before they finish, file it, and graduate. All right, so first year, register as a full-time student for 10 to 12 credits. Take a mix of the core courses and some electives that start developing your interests. Complete 2 research rotations with different HCD faculty where they get to know their rotation advisors, students in their lab. And you'll be employed by HCD in a research assistantship or a teaching assistantship for at least 50% for all 3 academic quarters. And that's about 20 hours a week that goes alongside your coursework. And then by the end of the year, you're likely able to declare your faculty advisor as well. And so we should talk a little bit about rotations because those are one of the unique features of our program. And then we'll go to Alan's question, but we'll talk a little bit about rotations first. All right, so rotations are a feature of our PhD program where for every student who comes in, HCD invests in 2 quarters of supporting their first year with research assistantships, but they're really meant for your development. They're for you to work with a faculty member and with their lab on a project or projects of your choosing each quarter. And so that you get to know that faculty member, you have some time that's protected for doing your research, you get to know their lab, and you can build out your network of mentors. And so often students will find their advisor from one of their rotation mentors. They may come in already kind of knowing who their advisor is, but for others, it's a more open question. And in that 10 weeks, they might read literature, they might work on a project, they might develop a project of their own, they might contribute to a senior students project or some mix of those things. So they're getting some hands-on research experience as well as time to really connect with that faculty member and that lab. And this, again, is a really important feature alongside coursework that helps you figure out where in the department you're going to find the mentorship and advising for the future steps in your PhD. All right, Alan.
Yeah, so it's another question. So from my master's that I got from Uganda, I wrote a dissertation that was based on a project or like designing a system that I had to, to code and, make it work and, present it to the panel, defending my dissertation that I wrote. So, so my question, I guess, is like, do you guys do something similar to that, or it is purely theoretical? Like you could probably go to the labs, but you write like a dissertation not based on a project that you have to implement and present to the panel when you're doing defense for your PhD dissertation.
I think that it varies a lot from student to student and their goals and their research interests. So some students do more descriptive dissertations where every study is descriptive, they're conducting interviews, they might be building theoretical models. And then other students will have every project is technical where they built something and the dissertation talks about the knowledge that was generated by building it, right? So what did we learn from that building? Mm-hmm. For students working with me, it's often a mix, but again, there's a lot of variation where, I think most common for my students is they might do some formative work in their first couple of years where they're doing interview-based studies or observations. And then towards the end, they've learned enough from that they say, well, I think I could do better. And they want to build something and show that it's better. But again, there's a lot of variation from student to student, depending on their goals and the kinds of research questions they want to answer.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks.
Other questions here? All right, so some of the other things about our program. Every admitted student receives $3,000 in travel funds that they can use to support attending conferences. We want you out there meeting people in the field. We want you out there sharing your work. And then another $3,000 on achieving candidacy. So that's once their general exam and core courses are completed. And the goal here is to make it very possible for you to be out there meeting people and sharing work. You don't have to present. Sometimes it's great to go to a conference to just meet people and learn what's going on in the field. And your advisors can help mentor on, is this conference a good opportunity or not for using these funds? All right, Kathleen, maybe I'll turn it over to you here.
Yeah. So just sharing some stats and makeup about our program, which I think is always kind of fun to just kind of get a sense, because UW is such a large institution, right? I think we have about 50,000 students. And the College of Engineering is quite large, but we seem fairly small as human-centered design and engineering. We have 71 current PhD students, 57 since the program started in 2004. About 40% are going into academia and 60% in industry. So to support students who have these varied interests, it's really nice. There's like opportunities in our department with our professional master's program that PhD students can get involved in when it comes to panels, industry meetups, portfolio reviews, interview prep, resume reviews, site visits with industry experts. We have coming up an alumni panel of folks who are out in industry, and then those that are in academia to come back to the program and share, what it was like searching for a job and what it's like working after you finish your PhD. And for the folks who are going in academia, they start to hone in on the publications and becoming a first author and making connections with other academics and relying on their faculty for support, whether they're going to go for a postdoc after they graduate or go for a full academic role at another institution. And so we have these two pathways cleared out to really help students figure out what direction they want to go into after they graduate. And along the way, there might be internships and externships and opportunities to really gain experience to do that. So as we mentioned a couple times, 5.5 years is on average to complete the program. We're at a 72% completion rate. The national average is about 50%. A lot of times people might ask, like, well, are you striving to be 100% with your completion rate? But that's not necessarily the case. We have a master's program that students can complete along the way. And for most students, they do get through the program, as you can see there. But there's always going to be a small group of students where they realize their plans maybe changed. Maybe the master's was sufficient for what it was that they needed. Maybe they got a job in industry and completing the PhD isn't necessary for what they want to do, or their interests have changed, and they are happy with the coursework and the connections that they built through completing prelims and a master's degree. And so there always will be that pathway. It's a very personal journey for students to go through a PhD program. It's a long-term commitment. You're adding new knowledge to the world on the research that you're passionate about. So not everyone gets through the full program, and that's okay. And there's lots of ways to engage in this work and still get to a point where you can leave with a degree upon graduation. So we have a lot of support in the department, 21 graduate faculty members that can chair committees. These are the folks that you're going to name in your application, and they will be the first to review your application. So when you pull up and you start working on your application, there's a faculty list, and you will rank up to 4 faculty that you're interested in working with. It's not a hard rank. Anyone you list will have access to your application, but generally the first one you list we would expect they align most clearly to your research goals, as you see the type of support that you need to do the type of research that you want to do. And then those are the first to have eyes on your application, and then maybe share it with others who also could be interested in supporting your research goals. Once you're in the program, you might interact with other faculty in other departments, other HCDE faculty you weren't really aware of, and you have ways to collaborate or include them on your committee. We also left room in the application where you can name faculty outside of HCDE in your research summary, kind of the abstract to your personal statement and diversity statement. And if you already have any connections or partnerships with faculty outside of HCDE, and you might want to apply this work with another discipline or another department, we welcome you to include those names. And then that could be opportunities for faculty to connect or see what your mentoring team could look like if you were supported in this department. Sean, do you want to add anything about that?
No, I think you covered it really well. Yeah.
Okay. PhD breakdown of students in our program. So what's really exciting is being an engineering program, we have a high representation of women in our program, which isn't the norm for most engineering programs. Over 0.5% identify as BIPOC. You can see a breakdown here. We've built up in our department these student resource groups, and they're run by our Graduate Student Association. And so students who come into the program, if they're looking for peer-to-peer support, looking for connections as a F1 student, or looking for connections for students who might be interested in going to affinity-based conferences like NSBE or ACES. We have these wonderful student resource groups that are all peer-led, so students have a way to connect with each other. We also have a lot of students who go to Grace Hopper or SWE. There's a big SWE chapter in the College of Engineering. Most of our PhD students may engage in these conferences for networking and peer-to-peer group, but they're mostly focused on going to conferences where they're presenting papers, publishing research. Some of those are often grant-funded opportunities. And so Sean mentioned earlier about personal funding to go to conferences. And so most PhD students are really focused on going to the conferences like CHI, where they're going to present a paper. But we also have these wonderful groups of students where we're trying to get everyone connected and find community in different ways beyond just your PhD cohort. Where are our PhD alumni? They're all over. Sean, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so about 60% of our PhD students have been going to industry or nonprofits. So we see folks at Wikimedia Foundation, Berkeley Lab, which is kind of a mix between industry or a more academic setting, Duolingo, Google, Apple, Microsoft, Meta, right? So a lot of the big companies that you see out there have been hiring our students. And then about 40% go to academia. And so we have folks in informatics programs, computational media programs, as well as the Human Computer Interaction Institute at Carnegie Mellon, kind of all over the map, right? We're an interdisciplinary program, and so folks go on to many disciplines. There's not a lot of other departments named Human-Centered Design and Engineering out there, but lots of folks are excited to hire our graduates. One of the other questions that folks often ask is, right, there's all these funding paths, but how does it actually work out in practice for how folks are funded? In any given quarter, a little more about half of our students are funded on research assistantships of one type or another. And that could be a research assistantship that is funded by a rotation, a research assistantship that is funded by a grant that a faculty member has. And those are often, a little bit constrained in topic or quite constrained depending on the grant, because you have to do the work that was proposed in that grant. And then some students, about 10% in any given quarter, are funded on fellowships that they've brought in to support their research. And so those can be more open-ended. Students are applying for those themselves, and we'll try and support students in finding fellowships and also applying for them too. And then most of the rest of the students, so around 45% or so, are on teaching assistantships or instructor of record, where they're teaching our courses in HCD. That could be our undergraduate courses or our master's program, or they're also teaching in partner programs with other departments. And then there's another 9 or 10% or so in any given quarter who might be funded themselves or on some other kind of funding arrangement. Those students are often more senior, and they might have full-time jobs that align or part-time jobs that align with their research. Tends not to work super well when you're a more junior student, and having a lot of classes. But as you get more senior and you have more time and flexibility, then sometimes these self-funded routes can work. So I'll pick up Adina's question on the funding. So RA-ships, often the way that those match out is you're working with an advisor who has grant funding and they're supporting you. And so if I can't hire, for example, someone of my students for an RA-ship, then I might recruit more broadly. TA-ships, if you have if you're in the department funding guarantee, we will make or create a position that matches you based on your interests. But still, sometimes students prefer to teach another program because the course aligns better with the things that they want to learn how to teach. And so that can be more recruitment based. So it's a mix for TAships. But the idea is that if you're within that funding guarantee during the academic year, so autumn, winter, and spring quarters, there is guaranteed funding, and it could be either an RA-ship or a TA-ship. And then Alan, I see you've got a hand up.
Yeah, so okay, like assuming I was in the military, because the plan would be I joined the military, like on the reserve, and then be able to to use the military benefits, the GIB and the tuition assistance programs to fund my studies. How does that work? Do you guys accept that type of funding in the PhD program?
Kathleen, do you know, I don't think we've had students who have had that kind of funding in the past, so I'm not familiar with it, but I'm curious if Kathleen knows from the university.
It's hard because this is funding to just cover tuition, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like personal stipends, right? Because our funding covers your tuition fees and gives you a monthly stipend. So if you have a scholarship or financial support that has to be applied to tuition, you don't really need it. And you could, I mean, it could be like a quarter maybe where you aren't funded by the department, which could happen later on in your program. And then maybe you want to rely on it, or you're working off campus, then you could use that benefit to cover your tuition and your funding comes outside of UW. But definitely at the beginning, if it's only a tuition benefit, likely it's not needed. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
I wanted to switch over to the website to look at the application requirements, and I, in the chat, kind of addressed Adina's questions there. So just as a quick overview, which I'm sure a lot of you have been on the website and kind of seen the requirements in our application. So we're looking for a research summary and a list of the faculty you want to work with. So you should take the time, look through faculty websites, recent publications, even current students in our department who work in those labs and research that they've been working on to try to figure out who is most aligned with my research goals, who seems like they would be most excited about collaborating with me on my research goals. And then that's who you should name in your application. You have a chance in your research summary to share an introduction to the type of research that you want to do, any research questions that you've thought about so far, or how you want to explore the research with interest in theory or methods. What's the impact on community? Really anything that you're passionate about this research. I have to tell students, be vulnerable in sharing what you don't know about the space and what you do know. And so it helps faculty understand, are you ready for this next step of joining a PhD program and having the support of an R1 institution to do the type of research that you're interested in. We have this statement on equity, diversity, and inclusion to give you more space to think about your past personal experiences, what's the impact of the research, kind of the impact of how you want to engage in this community. It's an important part of the application, but I also want to say it's not a place to share anything that is uncomfortable or traumatic for you. And this shouldn't be a place to share trauma that you're not comfortable with. That's not the point of it. It's just a way to provide more space for you to talk about the type of research that you want to do and the impacts that it has related to human-centered design and engineering. So your statement of purpose can really focus on the research that you're interested in. We also ask that you upload a CV or resume, 3 letters of recommendation, and GRE scores are not required. So only if you think strongly that they add value to your application should you feel the need to include them. We also want to see unofficial college transcripts. So don't pay for official transcripts. You can do that later if you get an offer. But unofficial is just fine, a PDF that you can pull from online. And then lastly, if it applies to you, the English language requirement, which I'm expecting we might have a couple questions about that, so I'll wait to go into it. One question from Adina was, what is the most important thing to highlight in a personal statement? So I'm going to ask you, Sean, that question.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that there's a single most important thing. I think when I read a personal statement, I look for a lot of clarity around, is a PhD what you want, right? And so I think the most common way that I put down a personal statement pretty quickly is if someone's describing goals that are going to be best served by a master's program, right? If they're really interested in making projects or making products, but not in generating knowledge, right? This is really a research degree, and the primary goal is to learn how to create knowledge. And so that's really important to show that alignment with the goals of a PhD program. The next thing I look for after kind of alignment with the PhD program is, are they aligned with our PhD program? So is this someone who brings in enough preparation, and again, the right preparation can vary based on your goals and the kind of work you're proposing to do, that combined with our courses and the other supports in our program, that they'll be able to succeed, right? The PhD is long, and it's a huge opportunity cost of things you could otherwise be doing. And so we really try and admit students who we can support and who can fully succeed in our program. And so I look for that match. And then I also look for things like, is this a student who understands what it means to create research, and can they generate a plan? And again, sometimes people hear that the wrong way and they think, oh, I have to have 6 papers and blah, blah, blah. No, right? Like, you're going to be a student in our PhD program. I look for someone who is thinking about these kinds of things, but I know that when I read a statement that someone has a lot to learn, because otherwise they'd already have a PhD. And so looking at kind of, what kinds of questions are you asking? Do they align with what we support? Do you have a plan for how you might go about answering it? It doesn't have to be perfect, but just looking for kind of some sense that you're kind of thinking along the way that once you're in our program, we'll be able to add some supports to really help prepare you for a career in research.
Thank you.
One thing to highlight too is letters of recommendation. Those often can be a really mysterious aspect of applications, and a lot of assumptions that people know how to write strong letters of recommendation, but that's not necessarily the case. And so you should think about how you want to prep your recommenders. You're selecting them for a reason. So you might want to share that reason with them, why you picked them, what it is you think they could highlight and talk about, what challenges you've overcome, strengths you bring as a professional, how you collaborate and work with others. Are there any projects you're really proud of that they could talk about from a different perspective? Share your resume, share your application with them, make it really easy on them to write a longer letter about you. It's much better to pick people who know you well than pick people who maybe have like a high title in UX or HCDE type work. If they don't know you well, then that's not helpful, because we're trying to learn more about you as a professional and how you perform and how you face challenges and what it is you're excited about. So have those conversations. They can be kind of uncomfortable at first sometimes, but I think you'll feel really confident too when you have those conversations with your recommenders and hearing their support for you to do this type of program.
And I think with especially industry-oriented recommendation letters, often what they think of as a recommendation letter is quite a bit shorter than is normal for academic recommendation letter writers. And we know that, and we don't hold it against someone if their letter is short, but it definitely doesn't give reviewers as much to go on as a longer letter. And so when you're talking with folks from industry, again, pointing out that specific examples are really useful, telling them what you're hoping the letter will write, and saying, the average, recommendation letter for a PhD program is 2 to 3 pages, sometimes longer. And a half-page letter, it's not a lot of information that to add to your overall portfolio. And no, they don't have to be PhD holders, but someone who knows and can speak to why you're prepared for and excited about a career of research is valuable. And sometimes that is easier for someone who has some experience with research to write than someone who doesn't necessarily know what happens in a PhD program. Yes, this other question of, is it necessary or recommended to contact professors before the stage of applying? This varies. Some faculty for example, I get about 10 to 12 emails a day asking about working with me. A lot of them are form letters. I don't answer the form letters. And the ones that are a little bit more personal, I answer with a website that says, here's a FAQ, because I don't have time to talk with everyone who reaches out to me. And it wouldn't be unfair if I only talked with some people, depending on whether I had more time that day or not. So I prefer to handle things through the application process. Other faculty might have more time or fewer people reaching out, and they might prefer to meet. So it's okay to reach out. If you do, I encourage you to keep your email pretty short and to ask some specific questions. The emails that say, here is my CV, what do you think, are not useful. Those are the kinds of things where it's like, well, then you should just apply if you want me to review your application. But if you have some specific questions about research alignment or methods or things like that, especially if it's not someone who has an updated website, then it's okay to reach out. Do read their website first and see if they talk about their research interests or their advising plans. And we also have a page that is linked to from application materials of people's recruitment plans that may answer a lot of questions. So when people say, are you accepting new students next year? I point them back to that webpage that says, yes, I might be working with up to 1 new student. Yep, and Kathleen just linked it in chat.
Had a follow up to that, and then it left my brain and what I was thinking about. Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't remember. So that link I put in the chat, we try to collect from faculty if they're interested in reviewing and accepting new students. So you have the ability to look, and if all the faculty you're interested in working with, it says, I am not recruiting new students, then it's unlikely your application is going to be successful. And so that's something for you to kind of think about and talk to us about, because, or talk to me in a PhD advising appointment, because we try to communicate to applicants, you know, who's really looking for new students at this time. And so you're not spending all this time on this application to then have no one to look at it. Unlike our master's program and other graduate programs, you know, you're really being admitted by people who are saying, yes, I'm excited about this research. I want to get involved. I want to support them. No one is admitted to the program and then finds an advisor later. They are admitted and told, these are your mentors, or this is your assigned advisor. These are the mentoring team that's going to support you and work with you in your first year. And so that's why we ask you to name the faculty you want to work with and try to be as clear as possible in the direction you want to go, so that we have the right people look at your app who could be most interested to support your goals.
So for your question about research statement and statement of purpose, I think research summary is, I see as a little bit briefer, right? That's the kind of thing that someone might skim to see, is this an alignment? It's also the kind of thing that Kathleen or I might look at if we're trying to figure out who the right reviewers are for your application. So this is more about kind of topic and interests. The statement of purpose often blends more of your background and biography and what you've done before with why you're prepared to do what you want to do next. And it still is forward looking about why you want to be in this PhD program and what you want to do. But it's a little more biographical than the research summary, which is more, here's the topic and maybe some connections to with whom you'd want to study it and why UW is the right place. Let's see, next question.
I just want to announce before people take off that we have two incoming events that will be added to the calendar very soon. We're going to do a faculty panel about mentorship and supporting underrepresented students, and that's going to be on November 7th at 10 a.m. And then we also are planning a research talk with 2 faculty to share their research and talk about kind of how they work with PhD students and what maybe they'd be looking for in the applications. And that will be in mid-November. So I'm going to add the calendar link, and just keep eyes on that. We'll add those dates very soon with a sign up.
And then I want to pick up the question about, do you have to have research in your past research in your future area of interest? No, right? And so often a reason that you might want to go into a PhD program is that you're interested in research, but you haven't had a chance to work on the particular topic or the questions that you want to because it wasn't available where you've been in the past. Right. I think telling the story about why that changed or why the interest is valuable. Sometimes you get applications where someone looks like they've done a whole bunch of one thing and the statement says they want to do this other thing, and there's no evidence of why they want to make that change or what experience they have with it. And that can be confusing to reviewers. So saying something about why the pivot and why you're interested in what you propose to do is really, really helpful for reviewers trying to make sense of it. For a normal job, Alan, at least in the first couple of years, it's pretty near impossible. The funding plus the courses ends up being about 50 hours a week of work. And to do that on top of a normal job is just impractical and usually unhealthy. And our program's not really set up for part-time, especially in the first couple of years.
Yeah, it's about 50 hours of work a week, roughly, between school and being a TA or RA. So you'll be very busy. There might be scholarships or things that could be on top of your funding or other scholarships to apply for. But until you get through all the courses, you really have to be full-time on campus. And so it's hard to manage another position, but it might be only for a couple of years and then you could transition and work off campus. Did anyone have questions about the English language proficiency requirement? Okay. I'll just briefly state, so in our application, students must meet policy 3.2 by the graduate school to be admitted to the program. We have this added requirement that students need to meet a speaking score or have an undergraduate degree from the US in order to hold a teaching assistantship position, which is part of your funding guarantee. So most often students are fulfilling both policies, the full language requirement, either by doing an undergraduate degree in the US or in another country where English is the medium of instruction, or they've taken the TOEFL or the IELTS and have a sufficient speaking score to fulfill the requirement. If you have questions about that, definitely follow up. I have Monday drop-ins in the afternoons. Those are posted on the calendar, and then also I'm available for advising appointments. Question about Canadian students. So it's part of the application. It's not related to your citizenship status about the English requirement. It's about your native speaking language. So look through the application, and if you have questions, definitely follow up.
Aubrey.
Hey, I've been having this question in the back of my mind. So I've been in school for 5 years now in computer science, and I'm wrapping up a master's at Georgia Tech right now. And I'm looking for a program, but I'm kind of an interdisciplinary person. Like I work in art, I work for an artist and sometimes travel abroad with him. And I'm wondering like, how does it, like if you're both an engineer and maybe an artist too, like, is there a way to bring that together in this program? I just wonder, I know there's the DX Arts program, but that, like, I'm thinking more along the lines of like developing engineering tools for collaboration, things like that. Like, is that something that you are familiar with people, previous faculty or researchers doing?
Yeah, I think we do have some really strong examples of folks combining that. And again, I feel like art is so personal and varied that they may not be perfect examples that translate clearly, but I think folks I would look to are some students in Nadia Peak's lab where they're doing work on fabrication, but it's often in very creative spaces like textile making, right, for clothes or wall hangings, or cooking, which is also a creative endeavor. And then one of the new PhD students who started this year, we were just talking in our Intro to PhD Studies class about their interest in bringing together, publishing about work, but also doing exhibits and kind of that as a way of communicating knowledge too, and another way of sharing their research. So I think it's certainly possible. We also, James Pearson, Audrey Desjardins in design also co-advise some of our students and so can bring some of that perspective. I know that when I have students who really want to figure out, okay, what does it mean to do this work? And Danielle Rosner, who's also in our department, also have this kind of more exhibit history toward sharing work and ways of knowing. And so I think it's within our interdisciplinary portfolio, and then a lot of it's about finding the right team to support you and working through how to best do that for you.
Okay. I had additionally related to that. So I've been working in engineering education, and I had gotten my name on a couple of publications, and what if I were to continue to work with, is it possible to keep working with people that you've worked with before at other universities, or is that frowned upon?
It's not frowned upon. I think not everyone, sometimes folks come in with the intent of doing that, and then find that just because of opportunities at UW,
Totally.
right? And Zoom and time zones can be barriers, right?
Or 50 hours of work a week, yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes external folks fit in with that too, right? Where they might be part of your rotation or they might be a mentor. And so I think some students have had undergrad advisors continue on in their committee or something like that. It's not the norm, but it's not because it's frowned on. It's just often what folks find easiest or right for this chapter in their studies. But yeah, it's possible if everyone's excited about it.
Okay.
I think overall our advisor, you hear, I think sometimes about these myths or beliefs of or reality of advisors being territorial about their students. And I don't think that's the culture here at all. I think folks want the best advising and mentoring team for their students, whether that's folks here or folks from elsewhere in their life.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks. Mingzi?
Yeah.
Oh, hi. I'm an international student from the UT Austin Graduate School in kinesiology, and I already got a master's degree in US, but I didn't get an undergraduate bachelor degree in US. So do I still need to take the TOEFL test again and submit to the application material?
So you having a master's degree at a US institution, it satisfies the admissions requirement. But you should look at policy 5.2 on the graduate school website to see if you have any other test scores or documentation that meets the teaching requirement. We can and will admit students who have the teaching requirement outstanding, but in order to access that part of your funding guarantee, you have to satisfy that component. So it could become an issue for you later on. But you have until at least winter quarter of your first year to satisfy that part. And we've had students do that. So it sounds like you're all set to apply, but I would look into it and see if that's going to be a concern for your funding guarantee.
Okay, thank you so much.
And I think even if we will admit students who could satisfy it later, I think faculty can sometimes feel more confident about someone's success if they know they meet it now. And so sometimes it can still be valuable to just very unambiguously satisfy that requirement before you apply, because then faculty are like, okay, I don't have to worry about that part of their funding plan.
Okay, thank you for your advice.
Other questions? Otherwise, I see we're at about time too, so we.
I have a question. I've just showed up. I'm sorry, guys. So okay. I think my question pretty much sounds like that of the previous person. I have a master's degree in information systems from Uganda. I have a bachelor's degree of mathematics and computer science, and I'm currently enrolled in a master's of cybersecurity and leadership at the University of Washington in Tacoma. My language of instruction for the degrees that I got from Uganda was English, and so I'm wondering, do I satisfy the English requirement, or I would have to go through that situation too as well?
Yeah, the 5.2 teaching requirement policy is just a little bit more strict. So, you'd have to check what transcripts, and maybe, you know, if you apply, if we're not sure whether you qualify, we'll engage with the graduate school and kind of verify. And so, like, you know, sometimes it's easier to just figure out when students apply, because then we have all the information that we can then talk to the graduate school and kind of advocate if we're wanting to admit you. So that's why sometimes it's just easier for us to figure this out when you know you meet the requirements for admission. But they are just strict on kind of looking at the timeline of students studying in the US. And so that's why a master's degree isn't sufficient, because they're only 1 or 2 years. It looks like a 3-year degree or more is sufficient, because like they accepted JD, has high communication as well in those programs. So if you'd like, we could follow up and talk about it in a one-on-one. And you're welcome to send me an email so that we can kind of dive into that policy and what might work.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And then I'm typing an answer to Manya's question, but I'll actually say a little bit here, right? I think many of you, especially if you're an interdisciplinary person, will have goals that are beyond what HCD can support on our own. And so I think to the extent that you highlight, you know, if you need some expertise elsewhere on campus, highlight that in your personal statement as part of your plan for how you'll support your studies. Often when I read a statement and I see that there's something that HCD can't support entirely on our own in the application, I start to wonder, oh, are we really the right program? But then if I see that the student has a plan for how they're going to access other resources across campus for it, that can do a lot to reassure me, especially if they've already had conversations there. That said, I think there can be a time where it looks like the bulk of someone's work is going to be outside of HCDE, and then I might start to wonder, well, actually, would that program be a better fit and better support their goals, right? So you want to make really clear what HCDE is bringing to support your studies, but we know that we're not the only expertise on campus. And actually, one of the advantages of being at UW is that you can access experts from all these other departments and fields, and so it's okay to bring in a discussion of how that would support your work.
Cool. Any final questions? This is your chance. We will send out the slides to those that attended if you're registered, and we will share the recording online. We have those next 2 sessions coming up before the December 2nd deadline. The faculty panel, I'm really excited about that panel. We have 3 faculty members and an HCDE alumna who's working at another institution, and it's going to be a conversation setting to talk about the mentorship and resources they utilize as undergraduates and graduates and in early into their career, and how they support other students that are coming through graduate education. And then we also have our faculty research talks that will be coming up in mid-November. So I hope you can attend those. And thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.